Yo, what's up guys? It's the Insane Game Freak here. So I haven't really made my Switch reactions, primarily because I kind of wanted to wait a few days to analyze everything. And I think the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to do multiple videos and split it up between each aspect of the Switch. So this first half is just literally just taking a look at the hardware and analyzing it from that perspective. The next perspective will probably be games, and the third perspective will probably be, and I'll kind of title each video accordingly. But for right now, I know the first two videos are going to be the hardware itself, and then the next one will probably be games, and I guess the next one after that might be third party depending on how I go. So that's just kind of get into it in the design of this fucking thing. So let's start with the look. Essentially, it's a fucking tablet with two new generation Wiimotes attached to it. Like, that's really what the Joy-Cons are. They're calling them a different name because of what Nintendo's trying to do. The goal for this system is not to associate it with the Wii. So you're probably wondering, well, how do you know they're new generation Wiimotes? I'm also going to be pulling from Emily Rogers' rumors of what the console is, of stuff that that hasn't been explicitly said by Nintendo yet, but are part of the same rumors that supported that the Switch was gonna look the way it does currently. So a lot of some of that will be speculation. That's me kind of assuming that, but I'm also gonna go off of the design of this thing. First off, and I'll talk about the OS stuff later. So like the virtual console and stuff, but that would lead into some of my reasoning and believing why these are new generation Wiimotes. I don't think they're going to get rid of the eShop. I think the reason why they switched the eShop from the Wii to Wii U is because the Wii's eShop really wasn't like a functional eShop under an infrastructure. They kind of just made an eShop and kind of just threw shit on the eShop, but didn't really have it relegated to anything. That's why the eShop was so fucking clunky. The Wii shop, I mean, was so fucking clunky. The eShop seems like it's actually going to take the whole Nintendo account system, and it felt more fleshed out than the Wii's eShop. And there is, and here's the thing: you're gonna do virtual console for almost every old school Nintendo device you had, and for the Wii specifically, that either means you have to restructure a fuck ton of Wii games to play only on classic controls, or you keep making new generation Wiimotes. That's one of the reasons why I didn't think motion controls would ever truly die for Nintendo, because you have old school games, and even the Wii U has games on it that use motion controls. They're not getting away from that. It's just that they're not going to market it as a part of the console in their first reveal, because that automatically screams Wii. And the one thing that this trailer was supposed to do that they did well was say, we're not going to show Wii. If we show shit that's Wii, we're going to avoid much Wii relation as you can, at least to the general market. That's why there's no touchscreen gimmick push. There's no Wii Sports, Wii Party game push. That's why they did that, because the whole goal for this original reveal trailer is to say, we're not pushing Wii. Those are aspects of the console that exist, but we're not making them the main focus like they were with the other consoles, because it'll automatically give off the same problem and either confuse consumers, and I think that's the goal. If you're getting away from the Wii name, we're not going to keep pushing Wii shit. It'll be a part of the console, it'll just be that low tier kind of, it's there and it exists, but we're just not going to heavily push it as the selling point of the console. Especially when the selling point of the console is pretty much just a perfected Wii U, where the Wii U was limited in a range of how far you could take it away from the console itself, whereas the tablet is the console this time. So analyzing the way this thing looks, the design looks way less kiddie looking. And look, I don't hate the way the Wii or the Wii U look. I'm just saying they don't look kiddie looking. If anything, you can tell that the Wii U, the Switch seems to be taking its design, at least from the tablet and the Joy-Cons connected to the tablet, from the Vita. And here's the thing: no one shitted on the Vita. So I don't think we're going to have a problem in terms of form factor and playability. It seems around the same size as the Vita or the PSP, which I don't think anyone really shitted on. And that's why I don't understand if any Sony guys are freaking out about the way this thing looks, because I'm like, you guys, you're the ones who also championed the PSP and the Vita that look pretty similar just on physical design on it. So, I mean, that's a thing in itself. So I'm not really concerned about throwing it in my pocket and letting it go. I'm sad that we've lost the two screen experience, but then again, once again, we're not trying to do Wii shit, so we're not gonna push Wii shit. And two screen experiences is Wii shit. The Joy Cons, I know people have had issues with how the things look. It's like, oh, you look at the positioning of the buttons, look how small it is. If I took how small it is in comparison to some of these ladies' hands, I would probably say it's probably like a third. It's probably like 2/3 of this remote. That's probably the size of a Joy-Con, is like 2/3 of a remote. That's not terrible. And granted, you would only play this way if you're having a friend play it. Like, people acted like this was the main way you would be playing this, even if you were on the go. If you're playing, the only time you would do this is if you're playing local multiplayer. And if you're playing local multiplayer, that's only if you just are at like a that feature will barely get used except for like fucking conventions. The main way you're gonna be playing it, if you're playing it out somewhere and you want to prop it down with the kickstand and shit, you're gonna be holding this. You're gonna be holding two Joy-Cons in your hand like this. And some of you would say, well, that's still not comfortable. Why? It's a perfected Wii remote design. The Wii remote had the stupid inconvenience of being tethered, where you had to plug in a fucking nunchuck and your arms could only go out this wide. When you have two Joy-Cons that are now wireless, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Actually, this allows, and I don't know if they're going to do this, but it allows you now to have it's kind of like the Move. It's, if you notice, this is actually taking like, it's like a perfected Wii remote, which is somewhere where the Move was at. Where the Move was doing the same fucking thing. Where the Move was two separate devices you held in your hand and you did shit with. You know, the shit that they're using for VR. It's essentially that, just on a smaller scale in terms of like form factor and design. Which, once again, is not a big deal because it's only going to be used for like motion control gaming, if they even decide to push it, which they don't have to. They've created like 3 or 4 ways to play. This reveal show 3 or 4 ways you can play the fucking thing. You can play it with and I'm curious if you can still do the Joy-Con like that even. I think you can. Like, think about it. They gave like this little, people have been calling it the puppy dog controller because that's what it looks like. Or the sad puppy controller. They have it where you can slide those two things in and hold it kind of like, and so it feels more like a traditional controller. But if you wanted to, what's stopping you from just taking the two out and then holding them the same way you would do if you're on the go, where they're just two separate smaller Wiimotes? Perfected Wiimotes that aren't tethered to anything, meaning I could do more complex motions and shit, because these are obviously improved motion controls. But once again, that's speculation. The game cartridges, I already kind of figured it wasn't going to be. When I saw the way the cartridges looked in the trailer for the Switch, I figured I had a sad suspicion that it wasn't going to be 3DS backwards compatibility, which has been confirmed that it is not 3DS backwards compatibility, which saddens me to an extent. But I think it's, once again, it's the whole, we're getting away from the Wii shit. We're getting away from we're trying to do something new. It's essentially, it's Nintendo rebooting themselves. It's like an unofficial reboot. That's what the Switch is to me. An unofficial reboot of the Nintendo brand, which is why they've gone out of the way to kind of distance them to make it feel like a new experience. I know people, and listen, I'm sad about lack of backwards compatibility, but realistically, there's nothing stopping digital backwards compatibility, especially if we have the account system perfected now, where I can literally just transfer games over. Because think about it, this thing can still technically do 3DS games, just as through emulation and shit. Wii U games are probably just going to be cart ports, but 3DS emulation isn't something that's far-fetched to me. But that all depends on whether or not, how they want to handle that. And it also depends on whether the account system is perfected. Even though we do now know that you can't do a Wii U-like experience on it. You can't have the game, you can't have the screen out and the screen on the TV and use them at the same time. Like, this thing has got to be docked if you're at home. Which, once again, is getting away from the Wii U and the Wii U mindset. It's like, look, we can't, that's a thing, and look, it's not like anything on the Wii U that was done was so fucking amazing that you couldn't do on a console. It's just that most of it's just like a nice convenience for gamers who like this shit. You essentially could still do it, you just be relegated to like traditional control shit. Like when I'm at home, if I want to like type messages out and shit, I'm just relegated to using the control method. You're essentially still using the old. You're using what the place. You're pretty much doing what the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One does for all their shit anyway. So I mean, for those who don't really give a fuck enough, and realistically, it's not. Once again, I'm getting away from the Wii U mindset. That's the whole goal. So it's understandable. Going back to the Joy-Cons for a second, a lot of people were questioning why is the D-pad split up on the left side. Well, that's for a reason. It's because when you take these Joy-Cons out and you turn them sideways for multiplayer, they essentially become the X, Y, A, B buttons, which is great. Also, that we know that this thing has triggers on the back of it. Has 2 triggers. That means we essentially we'll have the analog stick for movement, which is already better than the fucking Wiimote, because the Wiimote, you were stuck with a D-pad no matter what kind of game you were playing. I can play almost any game with an analog stick. Now, granted, is it better to play analog stick for like 2D games? Not necessarily, but it's way more appealing than having a fucking D-pad that was relegated to 2D games and 3D games. Metroid Other M, fuck you. I mean, imagine if you had this, the Joy-Cons instead of the Wiimotes for the Metroid Other M. That game would almost halfway be better purely for that fucking reason. Purely just because I have an analog stick. But that means that these things out of the box will have 2 triggers on the side of them, an A, B, X, Y button, and an analog stick, which is almost borderline what a controller has anyway. The only thing you're missing is probably like a fucking D-pad, and it's kind of like it's essentially doing this. It's like splitting, it's like taking it's like cutting this part of the Wii U gamepad off and just having this stuff right here and then the 2 buttons on the side. It still fucking works, and that'll be perfectly fine. Now, obviously, people are still concerned about it being small, but let's be real here, most people aren't going to play it that way anyway. You really won't have to unless you have a friend huddled next to you, which most people aren't going to do anyway. It's just something you can do. It's just an option. That's kind of the whole gimmick of the trailer, is giving me options. Do I want to play like a fucking traditional light type controller with the dog look of the controller? Do I want to fucking buy a pro controller and play it that way? Do I want to play it like the Wiimote? They appeal to every Nintendo fan. If you like the Wiimote look, you still got it. Actually, it confirmed that we still have the Wiimote style, because we saw him play it out when he was playing the Skyrim looking game. The game that wasn't confirmed to be Skyrim, but looks like Skyrim. They appealed to every gamer with those control schemes. You have a pro controller for traditionalists. You have a game that kind of hits that weird middle section that's still kind of like a traditional controller, which is the dog look. You have the Wiimote style, which is the fucking 2 hands like this, or the other Wiimote style, which is the sideways. You can do it whatever the way you want, and you're not limited, and you're not punished for picking one way over the other, because you can always switch between the styles. Talking about certain features of it, like it's being powered by NVIDIA. That means it's at the very least going to be around Wii U level, if not going near towards going like, it's probably going to, if I had to take a shot in the dark, it's probably somewhere between, it's like halfway through between the Wii U and the Xbox One in terms of power, which isn't terrible, especially considering if third-party developers are smart, what's going to actually start happening when the Switch is released, we're going to start seeing this shift from the 3DS to the fucking Switch. And let's be real here, half of the reason why the fucking 3DS does as well as it does is because of all the third-party games will get off of that motherfucker. Well, look, oh shit, here's a new Monster Hunter game that's designed for the Switch, because Capcom is not gonna not release another Monster Hunter game. Well, look at this. Now I have a console Monster Hunter game that was developed for the Switch. Like, hopefully, and maybe that's what they're going for, is that the 3DS carrying on for like a few more years will allow the Switch to allow some time for third parties to kind of test the waters and jump into it. But you still got the 3DS hanging around out there. So it's not like you just threw a console out dead in the water, which is essentially what happened with the Wii U, where you threw out the 3DS that was already struggling, and then within the next year you threw out the Wii U, which also continued to struggle. And by the time the 3DS picked up steam, the Wii U still lagging behind. So you got 2 consoles they're struggling to get out the gate. People don't remember that, but the 3DS struggled when it came out in 2011. It didn't really kick off until like 2012, which is when you released the Wii U. So it's like they're both kind of like the 3DS was kicking up, and the Wii U's just fucking crawling, and it's like, damn it, we shouldn't have done this. Now having the 3DS out for a while, as long as it has, allows the 3DS is already flourishing to begin with. Now the Switch can kind of grow in the background while the 3DS is still doing shit. We're not concerned with the Wii U. We've been down that road. So now they'll have something out in front, and so the fucking developers who develop on the 3DS have something they can test the waters with. But they still got the 3DS out there. The 3DS is still out there, but they can throw it out here. So you know. And then I'll just kind of touch on some of the rumors that kind of help prove the point. This thing probably is going to have a lot of internal storage, which people weren't expect. You really shouldn't expect that from anything. Most tablets don't have a ridiculous amount of storage. The fact that it's using game carts means you really wouldn't have to concern yourself with it anyway, because in Nintendo games, almost every Wii U game, minus like a few of them, was like less than like 10 gigs downloaded. Half of them were like somewhere between 2 and 5. So, I mean, you could download a fuck ton of shit on your Wii U. It's the indie games and the third-party games that would kill you. It's one of the reasons why Fatal Frame was a bitch. Xenoblade is a bitch because of the data packs and stuff. A lot of games won't suffer too much. It also questions, and if you notice the game cards in the little screenshots you can see of it, the game cards look closer to traditional SD cards, which nowadays can go up to almost like 100 gigs. Like, I think I went on Amazon just to give myself a general idea of where SD cards are priced at, and I was like, well, okay, SD cards, where would you be at space-wise if you're still putting out $60 games? And $60 games, where would I be for price? Well, 64 gigs right now is like almost $20. People are concerned about, oh, well, you know, these games, how are you going to get third-party games to run on this shit? 64 gigabyte SD cards are like somewhere between $20 and $40. That's more than enough. If you wanted to get up to near 60, you can get to 128 gigs off of an SD card for like 40 to 60 bucks. So I'm not concerned with the third-party games being too big and not being able to run off this thing, because SD cards go so fucking big anyways that any game that's out now could be ported to an SD card and run off of that fucking thing if it's able. And considering it's running new technology, unlike the Wii U that wasn't, it's a lot easier to port for. The fact that we already confirmed Unreal Engine 4 and the Unity shit, and probably HTML5, that means that most games now could run on the fucking Switch, probably with some slight downgrades in terms of graphical fidelity. That's about it. I'm thinking in terms of the way, like in terms of this design, the way it works, the way they've handled this, and if we go off of some of the rumors that it will have SD card support, the screen is touchscreen. They took the camera and the microphone off this fucking thing, which really is fine because no one uses the camera like that, even on the 3DS. There's no point in putting a camera in here. Microphone, it's the same shit. If I have a headphone jack, I can put in a mic. Yeah, so we got, I'm looking through obviously there's a heavy push for social sharing because a lot of people are speculating that other button that's on the controller that's not the home button but the other square looking button is a share button. That's fine, cool as fuck. There's rumors that the dock, or we already saw that the dock has USB ports, which automatically kind of makes me think, well, maybe that means that the GameCube adapter can now work with it, since the GameCube used two fucking USB ports. And then there's the rumors of no region locking, so if you have issues with censorship, you can just buy the Japanese version of the game. The only thing that might be issues is probably like the size of it, the cooling, because I've heard it's not great, and then the fucking battery life. That's it. That's literally it. You really, realistically, the Switch controller is just a slimmed down, modernized gamepad. That's really what it is. Slim this bitch down, stretch it out maybe a little bit. I would say the Switch is probably around, maybe around the same length as this. Like, I don't think it's gonna be that much longer. It's pretty much just a slimmer gamepad, which to me is perfectly fucking fine. Like, just looking at the design of this thing, I'm probably been talking for way too fucking long, but I'm just analyzing everything I can. I'm not seeing any issues with it, realistically. And for someone like me who plays a lot of handheld games, it will be nice to start, I'll probably say within the first year, we'll start seeing transitions of major 3DS third-party games leave the 3DS and make their way to the Switch, because the Switch supports more, which also means that when we get games that are like around the Vita's level of graphical fidelity, we can get games of the Vita's level, if not better, because the Vita is running old-ass hardware, whereas the Switch isn't. So we'll even get games better than the Vita. Hopefully, this leads into more console. The only thing I'm more concerned with is playing console games, having console design on a handheld. That's like my biggest issue. That's the one thing I don't fuck. Which is one of the reasons why I say Sony fans shouldn't be mad, because Sony fans like the Vita doing that shit. The biggest problem people have with the Vita is the lack of games, not the hardware. And this thing seems to be kind of following the Vita in terms of hardware. Also, for me, it's the whole, handheld gaming design versus the fucking console design. But once again, they're pushing this as a console anyway. So most of you, if you're like me, will be rarely taking this thing off the dock anyway. So half of this is irrelevant. People bitching about this, half of them won't even take it off the dock, but are complaining about the mobile aspects of it. Also because they think it's a hindrance. But it's already supporting everything that most games use. I think the only thing we don't know about is x86 architecture, if it's running that. But considering it's already running Unreal Engine 4 and Unity, and it's running a modern, well-known gaming processor with NVIDIA, I'm not sweating the lack of portability. It's more so if the thing sells well. And considering that this reveal is already Nintendo's highest viewed YouTube video, and for the most part has gotten a pretty positive first impressions, and we're already starting to see casual support, how some indie devs have already had dev kits, some of the third party have had dev kits. There's rumors of Beyond Good and Evil being Beyond Good and Evil 2 being an NX exclusive. I'm pretty positive on this thing, just hardware-wise, and I'll get into games in a sec. I'll get into the games in the next video. But as far as the way this thing looks and works, I'm not sweating games not being able to be ported on it, other than maybe you just don't want to scale the bitch down. It's literally the only thing I can think of, because it's not like you can't put a 100 gig game on a card. People act like you can't do that. When they sell SD cards for like over like 100 and something gigs, like 128, 164 gigs, for like $40 and $50 and $60, which is about, actually, this runs the question if Switch games would be cheaper, which is another fucking selling point. If Switch games are cheaper on top because they're running off of SD cards, that would be insane. If I could, like, think about it. Now, I think right now the 3DS's cards run at like 8 gigs. They can hold about 8 gigs, which is fine for most Nintendo games. You could essentially see Nintendo not only compete in terms of what the console could do, but possibly get SD cards that could run like, at the worst, at the most, probably like 64 gigs, which would be enough for most games nowadays. And have that shit run for like 40, 50 bucks, 50, $60. 50 maybe. Considering they were doing that with fucking games on the Wii U. They had games on the Wii U running for $40 and $50. And those were Blu-ray games. So we might even... And that would be... That'd be fucking huge. If the Switch versions of games were like $10 cheaper, not only am I getting portability with all those games, I'm also getting those games at a discount off the bat, on top of any deals and shit that happen. Now, whether or not they're willing to do that is a different story. But I'm just saying that'd be fucking huge. If the carts were like 10, even like $5 or $10 cheaper, That's fucking huge in the market. Because then it's like, well, fuck, I spend $5 or $10 less than what you pay for it, and I get to take this shit anywhere I want with me. Bruh. Even if the PS4 Pro and Scorpio's version is better graphically, which is the only thing I can think of that it would probably be better is graphics. If I get a discount off the bat for buying the Switch version on top of the idea that I can take this anywhere I fucking want to, that's a selling point people can get behind. You know, the Wii U, it was always like touch controls and shit, which a lot of gamers don't give a damn about. But everybody gives a damn about discounts. If I can get the new Call of Duty $5 less because I bought it on the Switch, and then take this shit any fucking where I can play Call of Duty all the damn time. I'm also curious if they're gonna do any phone deals like with Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T, which once again would be fucking smart, because then you're cross-promoting. And they were already doing that with Pokemon Go. If you heard about it, I think like T-Mobile was offering free like data plans for Pokemon Go and shit. That would be fucking huge. And then considering DNA is on the list of developers for the Switch, you could also see better ports of Pokemon Go. It's like, if you are a gamer who likes the idea of Pokemon Go, but wants it fleshed out and on a better system, maybe I don't want to use my fucking phone to play Pokemon Go because it kills it, but my Switch can run it like a dream. That's great! It's fucking great! Alright, I'm gonna stop. Because I'm getting into game talk, and I'm gonna save that for later. But just on the hardware side of things, if cards are cheaper to manufacture, if those games are like $5 or $10 cheaper because of using SD cards, that's huge. Because no one's gonna turn down a fucking game that I can take anywhere, and I'm spending $5 or $10 less off the bat than my competition. Fuck the graphics, because I can do it because I get better options. I'm trading graphics for portability and less money I gotta spend. That shit, you can sell that version of the third-party game on. Alright, that's it. I got a little bit too excited. There's really no downside for me except for battery life and power. That's it. Battery life and power. Everything else on this thing I'm perfectly fine with, hardware-wise. Now, obviously, I want to see OS stuff, but we'll talk about that in the next video. But please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Sorry for the 20-something long, almost 30-minute long video just talking about the fucking hardware. But it's just new console, new thoughts, and new ideas. Yeah, I'm excited. Anyways, I'll catch you guys later. Last gameplay to win. Peace off.